western Scotland. Snowmelt as well underneath those mild temperatures will provide further flooding impacts in places as well, so do take care, and a rain warning is in force. Generally though, for Northern Ireland, parts of England and Wales as well, we will hopefully start to see the cloud break up a touch more compared to what we have seen today, and so more of us should see some of those brighter, maybe even sunnier spells developing at times over the course of the day. We do still have that brisk wind around in places though, still coming in from that southwesterly direction, so temperatures around 9 to 12 degrees Celsius once again, even by day, but that blustery wind will just take the edge off the feel of things a touch when you are stepping outside at times. Into Tuesday, we've got another area of low pressure that is going to be moving its way in, steadily pushing its way in from parts of the southwest. Again, this will be bringing some further strong winds, particularly gales around coastal areas in the west, but also further bands of rain, potentially heavy at times, perhaps mostly affecting Northern Ireland, and then steadily pushing its way into Scotland, England and Wales. Still the risk of some showers around, but you've got the greater chance of seeing a few sunnier or brighter spells in there at times. Still though, those strong winds coming in from the south going to field in those milder conditions, but a change in wind direction later in the week means that we will start to see those temperatures dropping down a touch, much cooler for all of us. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff.
And my name is Julie, and we won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. The UK has announced £50 million of humanitarian aid for vulnerable Syrians across the Middle East after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad's regime. The Foreign Office says the emergency support will be delivered through the UN and NGO agencies to people in the country as well as to refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. Britain yesterday joined talks in Aqaba hosted by Jordan and attended by ministers and delegates. £30 million will be channelled within Syria for food, shelter and emergency healthcare, while £10 million will go to the World Food Programme in Lebanon and £10 million goes to the WFP and the UN's refugee agency, the UNHCR in Jordan. Now, this intervention comes a week after the collapse of the Assad regime.
We want to see a Syrian-led and a Syrian-owned future, and we want one that is representative and inclusive. That is what partners in the region and allies, close allies, signed up to yesterday, and that's what we'll be encouraging.
In other news, Labour has claimed a record pace for removing migrants from the UK, but channel crossings are still at an all-time high. The Home Office says nearly 13,500 people have been removed since Labour's election win in July. That's the most in any six-month period since 2019. However, the number of channel crossings continues to rise, with just over 21,000 migrants arriving by small boat, including a record 609 on Thursday. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says Labour is intensifying border security and cracking down on illegal working. However, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says it's Labour who are failing to control the borders.
I'm not going to run away from the subject of immigration. I never have. Labour are pretending that they're tough on immigration when actually they stopped us from doing quite a lot of things. It wasn't just the fact that we had a majority in the Commons. We did not have a majority in the Lords. So a lot of legislation, the Rwanda legislation, even when we were putting it through, it was getting blocked elsewhere. So I'm not going to have Keir Starmer, who wanted foreign criminals to stay in this country, actively stop them from being deported, pretend that he is Mr. Immigration.
And a tribunal has ruled that an alleged Chinese spy linked to the Duke of York and two former prime ministers posed a national security risk. The businessman, known only as H6, was barred from the UK last year after reportedly infiltrating high-profile circles, including attending events with David Cameron and Theresa May. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says Britain must maintain economic ties with China, but will act strongly against security threats. Critics, including Nigel Farage, are calling for the man to be named. The Duke of York, meanwhile, insists no sensitive matters were ever discussed, and he says all contact stopped following government advice. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The government bans puberty blockers, the Environment Agency bans white people from applying for internships, and Ipsos says the press is not allowed to state biological facts. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And of course, coming up on the show tonight, we've got many stories. Is the NHS ignoring the Cass review and proceeding with puberty blocker trials? I'm going to be speaking to campaigners from GenSpect and Transgender Trend about that. We're joined by Jamie Reed, who blew the whistle on the gender clinics in the United States. And also, I'll be speaking to the lawyer Sarah Phillimore to discuss the state of free speech in the UK. Where are we now? And of course, I've got a wonderful comedian panel here tonight to answer questions from this rather delightful studio audience. My comedian guests this evening are Bruce Devlin and Paul Cox. Now, many of you will know that I've been with GB News from the very beginning. Back in early 2021, before the channel had launched, it was decided that my show would be called Free Speech Nation and would focus on issues relating to free speech, cancellations and the culture war. And I remember that at the time there were discussions about whether or not we would have enough material to fill a 2-hour show every week. Well, we needn't have worried, because the culture warriors have been keeping us very busy over the past few years. They're slippery as well, because while they've been assiduously denying that there's such a thing as the culture war, they've also been trying to censor your speech, bullying, harassing and threatening anyone who disagrees with them, erasing and revising elements of history that don't fall in line with their belief system, denying objective truth, and basically trying to reorganise society according to their obsession with power structures and group identity. If that's not a culture war, I don't know what is. And so I'd like to thank everyone at GB News for giving me the opportunity to keep track of this ideology, one that's captured all of our major institutions, from the media to the arts, the civil service to the corporate world, the NHS, the military, the government, even the police. While other news channels have promoted these regressive ideologies, a worldview that seeks to divide us on the basis of race, sex and sexual orientation, at GB News we've been able to hold them up to scrutiny. Even the state broadcaster has largely ignored many of the key issues of our time, which is precisely why GB News has been so necessary. While I was able to present a 2-hour special on the WPATH files, the most significant medical scandal of the century, the BBC to date has not mentioned it even once. So although you might not agree with many of the things said on GB News, that's the whole point of free speech after all, at least I can say that we've been able to open up these much-needed conversations and report on the stories that other channels have been unwilling to touch. So tonight is my final show here on Free Speech Nation here at GB News, and I want to thank everyone who has been watching over the last 3.5 years. I want to thank the audience out there who have ignored all the hysteria from activists, have just watched the show and made up your own minds. And I should say that my decision to leave is simply because at the moment I've got some other creative projects that I want to pursue. I've already started working on a new sitcom. There are many other opportunities opening up, and I'm going to be keeping up my relationship with GB News. It's not that I won't be seen on the channel anymore. So thank you to GB News, thanks to all the incredible people who work here, and thank you for watching over the last 3.5 years. The culture warriors might still be fighting, but I like to think that we've given them a fair few knocks. We have a lovely studio audience, we've got a lovely panel. How have you both been this week? Are you happy, Paul?
I'm good, thank you, Andrew. It's a sad day, actually.
Well, it's sort of sad.
I listened to that. And it was quite powerful, and it reminded me of the opportunity that I've been given by GB News, particularly by yourself and Martin Gourlay in the very beginning. And I'm very grateful for that. And unlike you, I don't have any other opportunities.
Well, there we go.
So I'm going to remain here as long as they'll have me.
But you would choose to anyway. But I mean, I
genuinely, I will say this. So before I'd met you, Andrew, I'd read your book. I was inspired by you. I was really inspired by the opening of this channel, and from the minute I've worked here till the very minute I'll talk to you now, I'm very proud to be part of it, and I hope to remain part of it for a lot longer.
Well, that's very sweet of you, Paul. And for a more cynical view, let's go to Bruce.
I've not read anything you've produced.
No, I know.
I have no interest.
In fact, whenever you've been in a stand-up show and I'm performing, you've walked out. I see you do it.
No, I won't even talk to you backstage.
You're just not interested, are you?
I didn't know you before. I don't want to know you after.
No.
This has been a huge inconvenience.
I know.
It's a bit like Jerry leaving the Spice Girls, for some.
Yes. I thought that was seminal when she left, to be honest, but, you know, some people disagree.
I didn't. It's before Watershed, so we'll leave words like that alone. What I was going to say to you, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, it's a good question. No, I have. There are other things happening, other creative opportunities. I'm actually moving to America.
The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, because I have been signed up for the Real Housewives of Rwanda.
Is that right?
So, yes.
But look, I don't want to say too much about what I'm doing because, you know, things are in the pipeline, but I don't want to reveal too much too soon.
A sitcom?
I have been working on a sitcom.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, you know, pay it forward. I can act.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Yeah.
So this is like an audition for you tonight?
No, it's not an audition.
You'll definitely get a role. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. But, like, I mean, I am serious about the channel, and I do think, you know, GB News does offer us an opportunity to talk about the things that other people just aren't talking about. And they keep sort of trying to attack that, and people are very angry about it, because obviously there's a reason why these stories don't get covered and don't get mentioned. But we are able to do it here. So I often think, by the way, that a lot of people will say, well, you know, they don't agree with what a lot of the presenters say. But on this channel, we never get told what we say. We have complete freedom to say whatever we want, and I doubt I would get that anywhere else.
But we've spoken about this, and we've spoken about this a lot, but I get it in the neck a lot, not in that way, but for appearing on the channel, and I'm like, but I'm there to say what I think is right, and not, you know, I think a lot of people think you're handed a laminate and you have to say whatever the channel's rhetoric supposedly is, and it's not that case.
No.
So thank you for exposing me to the audience.
Well, yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I'm supermarket famous again.
You're now recognised in the street.
Oh, I've done TV in Scotland, I've done various bits. I've never been recognised from anything more than this in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
So there we go, because that's all you have a lust for fame. So this is perfect.
It was funny, I was in a bum bar in Birmingham and they went, oh my God, it's the Scottish guy with the wig from GB News. Right.
OK, on that note, let's get some questions from the audience. We've got a question from Paul. Where is Paul? Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi. I'd like to, first of all, thank you personally for all you've done in terms of, you know, just managing Titania. Very few people realise how good a poet she really is.
She's a great poet,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely brilliant. But, yeah, moving on to my question, which is, I know that GB News is a big fan of press regulator, Ofcom, etc. So I'd be interested to know as to what you think regarding their ruling against the Spectator recently.
Yes, well, it's not Ofcom, of course, because they're the broadcasting regulator. It is IPSO. And what IPSO have effectively done, if they've censured the Spectator and forced them to publish some kind of statement about this. But what happened was Gareth Roberts, who's a friend of the channel, he's been on my show, he wrote an article in which he pointed out that a man who identifies as a woman is actually a man. So he stated a fact. And they've said that that's not... No, it's interesting, you know, that when it comes to press regulation, it's very important, isn't it, that they have an ethical standard. Simply stating facts should not violate that standard.
Yeah, it's clause 12, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm afraid, Andrew, despite all of your good work and the good work of this channel, free speech is not really free in this country so much anymore. And the reason for that is that at any given time, on any debate, there can be more than one version of the truth.
Yeah.
And, of course, that just disables free speech in any way. And the reason that they do that is to protect people that may be offended. Well, that shouldn't be an issue for journalists.
Well, especially not. I mean, Gareth, in the article, was not attacking this individual.
No.
He was just stating a fact. And that I think we have to, as journalists, we have to be able to do that. Ultimately, you know?
That's exactly it. And what Clause 12 does is it kind of ties their hands, because it says you can't discriminate against anyone on all of the isms, colour of skin, whatever it might be, gender, sex, identity, whatever it may be. So that means that you can't... It's almost impossible, because you can't share opinion then, because you don't know if that opinion's going to be shared by the person that you're talking about or the group that support them.
But, you know, Bruce, I mean, this is the thing, like, the discrimination element, I get. You know, they've got this sort of element to the press. They say you mustn't discriminate. Fine. Gareth wasn't doing that. He was stating a fact that, by the way, you know, virtually every trans-identified person I know does not actually think they've physically changed sex. They don't believe that because they know that's not actually humanly possible. So for him to just state it shouldn't really be an issue for IPSO at all.
No, he should be able to state it. Did this come about? Was this all from the interview with one of my favourite people at a book festival with Nicola Sturgeon?
It was
because you know how much I love Nicola.
Yes, he was commenting.
I'm still a Nicola Sturgeon lookalike. I'm the world's #2.
Well, he was commenting on that discussion with Nicola Sturgeon because the individual interviewing Nicola Sturgeon was a trans-identified individual.
Right.
But he wasn't attacking this person.
No.
He was making clear that, you know, that's perhaps why the conversation went in the way it did, because the interviewer had a personal investment. That was all he was saying.
But also, as well, I think what was lost in that interview was asking Nicola, why is your hair so dry? Yeah. Because it's like a tinderbox.
Yes.
And I know you get angry with me and things, but to me, that is the bigger point. I want the truth about people's hair.
I think Nicola Sturgeon's lack of conditioner is actually...
She was health minister. How bad is it?
Yeah.
Show me the moisture.
Do you know what? We cover the most important topics on this channel. We always have. Thank you to Bruce. That's why we have Bruce here. Bruce brings us back on track, you know. We start talking about politics and culture and all of that nonsense. He's all about condition of Nicola Sturgeon's hair. OK, so let's move on now to a question from Andy. How are you, Andy?
I'm very well. Sad to see you go.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you, Andy.
Good luck in the future.
Cheers, thank you.
You'll do well. Should it be legal to have internships just for ethnic minorities?
What do you think?
No.
I mean, look, I thought, well, to be fair, Andy, I thought we'd got to a point where discrimination on the basis of skin colour, we all agreed that was wrong. I mean, I just thought that was something we all basically agreed. And what happened is the Environment Agency has actually offered internships, but they've said no white people are allowed to apply. And we've had this before with sort of, there have been factions of the BBC that have done similar kind of things. But what I find very interesting about this is when you introduce that kind of requirement, what normally happens, particularly with these media internships, because remember, unpaid internships and paid internships generally go to the more affluent people. So what you end up doing is that you end up people with, you know, from ethnic minority backgrounds who are from the upper middle classes getting all the internships, and white working class people don't get that at all. I think, Paul, we should just stop treating people according to their skin colour at all and just go on merit and who they are as an individual. I mean, isn't that what Martin Luther King was all about?
I think he was. The the meritocracy argument is the strongest possible argument for managing any of these problems, particularly in a society which is so divided now that it would bring... Look, I understand how we arrived at this point.
Yeah.
I don't want to undermine anything that went on previously, but we don't find ourselves in this point now.
Well,
and racism, sorry, Andrew, racism is not the way to beat racism, and this is anti-white.
Well, but the point there is, you know, if something like this would have been implemented back in the 70s, I would have thought that makes sense. You probably would have had racist people in these organisations deliberately not hiring people because they're not white. And you would have to address that. That would make complete sense. It's simply not true that there are racists working at the Environment Agency or indeed the BBC, or at least I bloody well hope not.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. None that are aware that they are. It might be outside their
Unless
awareness.
this is an admission that they're saying, well, we're a bunch of racists.
It's what I'm trying to avoid saying, because I don't, you know, you never know what might happen. But what do you do? What do you do? You have
treat people equally.
You have to treat people equally. And the trouble is, the definition of racism changes. It's changing with time. It used to be purely about, you know, being prejudiced against someone based on the colour of their skin. Now, if you actually look it up, as I did today, there are various definitions of racism. A lot of them talk about marginalised groups. A lot of them talk about minority. It doesn't talk about their race.
Yeah.
So it muddies the waters and enables people like the Environment Agency to play fast and loose with this type of thing.
Well, I just think we've just surely reached a point where it should be illegal to discriminate on skin colour. I would have thought. That's my view.
Yeah, you would hope across the board. I have been a victim of discrimination recently.
Oh, yeah?
Not because of the colour of my skin or even my hair. It was a quiz that I used to do in Scotland on the radio, and I said, hey, is there something wrong with my performances or appearances? No, but you've no idea how many male Scottish comedians I get looking to come on. I went, I'm a hybrid. How can you...
So they're saying because you're male, they don't want you anymore?
Yeah, exactly, which is really internalised homophobia. I see where this is going, and I'm going to court in the new year. Just for the day.
There is
no
something,
charges.
There is something quite patronising, you know, if you were to get a job or an internship because you were gay, like that, you would be patronised, just as I think if someone gets a job at the Environment Agency because of their skin colour, wouldn't they feel... Isn't this a soft form of racism in and of itself? I mean,
tokenism.
It's awful, really. Anyway, let's move on. We've got a question from Mike. Where is Mike? Hi, Mike, how are you?
Hi, Andrew. Sunday evenings won't be the same without you on this show.
That's very kind of you.
My question is, why are gender-critical public figures defamed so much?
Happens a lot, doesn't it? And, of course, I assume you're talking about Moira Deeming, who... Moira Deeming was on this show. She's an Australian politician who was driven out by the Liberal leader in Victoria, John Pesutto. He's just been ordered to pay a lot of money, hasn't he? $300,000, which I think is something like 25 quid in English money. It's quite a lot of money. But he said that because he basically defamed her and said that she was supporting a far-right rally. He was talking about the Let Women Speak rally in Australia, which wasn't far-right at all. Some opportunistic neo-Nazi idiots had turned up to try and make the most of this situation, and he just bought the media lies about this. But now it turns out you have to pay when you get it wrong like that. Calling someone far-right, I mean, well, what do you think about this? Should it not be the case?
Pay in this country as well.
Of course, because that phrase, far-right fascist, it's thrown around, and it can damage people's careers.
And it sticks.
And it sticks. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, shouldn't we have more means to address this kind of stuff?
Well, luckily she did. I mean, I met Moira at the live Free Speech Nation, the Battle of Ideas in 2023.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was brilliant. She's a great politician. I've followed her on Twitter ever since, X, sorry. And I'm really, you know, it's really empowering to see what she's doing. This was malicious.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't just malicious, it was a malicious political act, OK? She had organised a Let Women Speak rally.
Yes.
Posey Parker was there, amongst other people, and on the outskirts of this were some far-right individuals that had gate-crashed. Well, she did not invite them at all.
Yeah.
But Pesutto, I think his name is, leader of the Liberal Party in Australia, newly in position, saw this as a potential threat to his leadership because he thought...
You think that's what it is?
What he thought was, if this is a scandal, it will impact him personally. So he made it a scandal and extradited himself from the scandal, I think. And as a result, Moira Deeming was removed from the party. What I do hope now, and congratulations to Moira, is that she's let back into the party. He's saying he probably wouldn't vote for that, but hopefully she can. I hope one day she becomes the Liberal Party leader.
Well, let's hope. I mean, you know, it's so flippant. The idea it's really serious to accuse someone of fascism or being on the far right. It's a really serious thing. And the fact that it's so flippantly... The other thing that I find hilarious about this is you have a group of neo-Nazis turn up at a women's rights march. Do they really think that neo-Nazis are pro-women's rights? Because I tell you what, historically, they haven't been.
Do you know, even I know that, and I'm quite stupid. But no, I get accused of being a fascist all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I have no idea. People are just like, you're really fascist, you're really... I get called right-wing. I mean, me, get called right-wing.
It's a black shirt.
I mean, it's a black blouse.
Oh, it's a black
blouse.
OK, fair enough, fair enough. Well, look, that's all we've got time for in this section. But look, coming up next on Free Speech Nation, following the government's ban on puberty blockers, is it wise for the NHS to go ahead with a puberty blocker trial? Please, don't go anywhere.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated Hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at catering college. So, it's lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young, if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger, in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what? Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well, at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So, yeah.
These are the great influences.
Yeah.
What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle, member of the audience coming in a bit late there. Such is the way with live TV. By the way, we've been inundated with tweets and messages about me leaving. Don't worry, the show is not stopping. I should have made this absolutely clear. The show is going to carry on. Free Speech Nation is not going anywhere. Josh Howie will be hosting from next week, so please keep watching, because it's an important show, and Josh is brilliant. And like I say, you'll see me from time to time down the line with any luck. OK, so the NHS has been accused of ignoring the Cass review and going ahead with a trial on puberty blockers without the necessary safeguards. Gender-critical campaigners have written to Wes Streeting demanding the introduction of safeguards before proceeding. So, to discuss this issue, I'm joined now by the Director of GenSpect UK, Carrie Clark, the CEO of LGB Alliance, Kate Barker, and Stephanie Davis-Arai of Transgender Trend. Welcome, everyone. Stephanie, I'm going to start with you. I wanted to get a background to this. Now, obviously, we've had the Cass review. We've had Victoria Atkins implementing emergency measures to ban puberty blockers. We've had the NHS saying they're not going to do it anymore. But now we've had Wes Streeting from the Labour government saying they're banned indefinitely and private companies won't be able to get around a loophole and prescribe them in any case. So just give us a bit of background here.
That was the right decision. It was the only decision he could make. I mean, the National Institute of Health and Care Research has said that they're basically not safe. So we really want to know why then a clinical trial is going ahead with puberty blockers. And although clinical trials are done on children, and there are always risks, in this case, I think the risks are far outweigh the benefits, because I think this is a very different case to trialling medications, for example, childhood leukemia or life and death kind of situations. In the case of puberty blockers, the treatment is the harm. I think we really need to understand that the treatment causes the harm. It's not a side effect, and it's not a risk. It's actually the harm that's created by the treatment. So and the purpose of the treatment is to create that harm. So in puberty, you are developing and you're growing physically. You also have a surge of sex hormones, which helps girls to develop in a healthy way as females and boys to develop in a healthy way as males. If you stop those hormones, then the body is not going to be healthy. So the NHS is introducing ill health into a previously healthy body. And I think that is different to the other kind of studies and trials that we see.
So, Carrie, can I bring you in on this? Because obviously, as Stephanie says, well, there are some cases where trials are necessary in life-threatening situations where, we accept a degree of risk when it comes to the prescription. But we know that puberty blockers, there have been repeated studies that have shown that they are linked to testicular atrophy, a lack of brain development, poor bone density, all sorts of problems for something that should be, should it not, a therapeutic approach.
Absolutely. And what's really disappointing is that the NHS have looked at the Cass review, which found that psychological therapies are really very effective in helping people to manage gender-related distress, and chose to prioritise another study into puberty blockers, which we know are incredibly damaging, cause problems with mental health, infertility, really dangerous.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Kate, I want to ask you about this as well, because you're from LGB Alliance. We know that between 80 and 90% of adolescents referred to the Tavistock Paediatric Gender Clinic were same-sex attracted. Yep. We know that this disproportionately affects young people who are just going to grow up to be gay. So this is really a human rights issue, isn't it?
I think unless it's unpicked, unless the doctors look at the fact that most of the children involved in this describe themselves as same-sex attracted or both sex attracted, what we're really looking at is a trial on gay teenagers, and that adds to the sort of horrible list of medical trials on homosexuals that go back absolutely decades. I mean, we all know the story of Alan Turing, but I think it's worth repeating, that in 1952, he was arrested, charged with homosexual acts, and he had a choice. So he either went to prison or was chemically castrated, and he chose to be chemically castrated. 2 years later, he came to a tragic end. And there's something rather circular about this, like horribly circular about this.
My understanding is that some of the drugs for puberty blockers are actually the same as those that are used to chemically castrate.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And we would say, gay teenagers aren't sick. They weren't sick in 1952, and they're not sick now.
Yes.
They shouldn't. The homosexuality doesn't need to be cured or fixed with any kind of drug. It doesn't need a trial to tell us that. It's an absolute fact. And our feeling is that before doctors start handing out drugs, they really need to look at their waiting room and ask themselves, why is this waiting room full of gay teenagers? You've really got to unpick that. And I'm hoping the ethics committee, that might be something that they'll pick up and do something about.
So a lot of people who worked at the Tavistock, a lot of people within this have pointed that out. They have been saying that this is the case. It's obvious that this is the case.
And everybody knows this because, historically, around 85% of children would... in fact, puberty was seen as the cure for gender dysphoria in early childhood. And most of the majority, around 85%, desisted and came to terms with their natural body and grew up to be healthy gay and lesbian adults. And the other thing that we know from the study, because remember that the Tavistock has already done a study on puberty blockers, and the finding there was that 98% of children who were put onto blockers went on to cross-sex hormones. So you've got, in the past, a really, really small number of children who persisted in their gender dysphoria. Puberty was a cure for most. So we're not only giving them a drug that harms them now, we're giving them a drug that prevents the
cure.
The best outcome.
Well, but activists would say that these are reversible. Puberty blockers are reversible. We shouldn't worry about them.
There's no evidence to show that they're reversible. And also, if you're doing a trial, there are lots of things you can do before you actually test a drug on children. One of the things is animal studies, and the results... Now, those studies have lost their funding for some reason, but one of the worrying results was that brain changes from puberty blockers don't go back when the puberty blockers are stopped.
Yes.
There's other things that we should do, I think, before. There was a data linkage study that Hilary Cass set up, but the adult clinics wouldn't give her the data that we need. So we could study the children who've already gone through puberty blockers. The NHS hasn't yet given a date for their promised review on cross-sex hormones. Now, given that 98% of children go on to cross-sex hormones, it's clearly the first step in a medical pathway.
But there's a lot of resistance here, isn't there? I mean, Carrie, Wes Streeting, I think, to his credit, has made this announcement when many, many people within his own party really deeply object to it. But they're not clinicians, they're not experts, they're not people like Dr. Hilary Cass, who's done the research. So why is it that this ideology is so powerful that it will allow people to override the evidence that is being presented to them?
Well, it takes so much courage to stand up to this, especially when young people have been told that these are life-saving medications and they're very, very distressed. And we have to imagine politicians like Wes Streeting, you know, being confronted by parents and their children who've been lied to about the effects of these drugs. So I think it does take a lot of courage to stand up and push back with the evidence. But unfortunately, I think they need to be a little bit more courageous than they've been so far.
They've also been lied to. I mean, a lot of parents have been told that your child will kill themselves.
Yeah.
And we know from the evidence that's not true.
This is just such an unacceptable lie. And again, going back to the evidence on psychological therapies, the Cass review identified 4 studies on suicidality and found that in 3 of them there were significant improvements in suicidality for children with gender-related distress who had therapy rather than having puberty blockers.
So given, Kate, that this is an ideology that won't give up without a fight, you know, the fact that people are still having to argue the case even though there's been a 4-year rigorous study by Dame Hilary Cass, what can we now do to get the message across that actually even the trial of itself is a problem?
Well, I'd like to echo the fact that Wes Streeting, I think, has been really brave. It's the kind of pushback that he's got from a lot of activists around this has been horrifying, particularly, you know, going back to the suicidality, putting up tombstones outside his office, directly accusing him of being responsible for the death of children is absolutely horrifying. So I think, whilst we remain really, really concerned about this trial, we do need to allow the Ethics Committee to look at this properly and report back on it, and we need to support an ethical way forward in every instance. So I don't think it's necessarily a case of digging our heels in and saying no on any account. You know, evidence is a good thing. You know, we should be led by science and evidence and not by opinions and ideology. So we're looking for this to give good outcomes for all children. And currently, all of us, I think all of us are in agreement that there are so many concerns that remain unanswered that it really feels in a very precarious place at the moment.
So, Stephanie, and finally, you know, it is a step in the right direction, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's fantastic that Wes Streeting wants to go with the evidence rather than being swayed by activist demands.
From politicians as well.
Yeah, from politicians, yeah. And that's so heartening, I think, for all of us working in this area, that we go by the evidence base. And really, I think Cass said last week that she's done her job within the remit of what she had to do. Now it's up to the NHS and it's up to stakeholders to do their job, and that includes the ethical board, who I think need to look at this issue in a wider way than perhaps a life-saving treatment, the way that you would look at a life-saving treatment.
OK, well, this is all very positive, I think, and we are moving in the right direction. Can people find more about what you're doing, Carrie?
Yeah, if people can go to genspect.org/international/UK, and there you will find a full report on what we know about the puberty blocker study so far, and a template letter to write to your MP, because I think it's really important that people with concerns let their political representatives know that they're worried about this.
Fantastic. Well, Stephanie, Carrie and Kate, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. NHS spokesperson has said the following. The fact is any trial will be subject to the usual stringent safeguards, follow best practice. A National Research and Oversight Board has also been established to ensure research is embedded at the heart of new services as they are shaped and developed, and includes Dr. Cass as a member. So next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be hearing more from the audience as an OnlyFans model hits out at Lily Phillips for sleeping with 100 men in a day. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, very good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you have had a good evening, although we have started to see a band of rain push its way into northern and western areas of Scotland. Some quite squally winds around this evening as this continues to move its way in. It will turn quite persistent for western areas of Scotland, in particular the Highlands, seeing a lot of rainfall during this forthcoming night. Generally drier further towards the south, but quite a lot of cloud around. Blustery still in amongst all of that. Those southwesterly winds filtering in, some quite mild air, so most of us will hold up around 9 or 11 degrees Celsius as you start off Monday morning. This rain band will still be in place throughout much of the day on Monday, and so really we will see those rainfall totals really tossing up, potentially half a month's worth of rain quite widely across areas of western Scotland. Snow melt as well underneath those mild temperatures will provide further flooding impacts in places as well, so do take care, and a rain warning is in force. Generally though, for Northern Ireland, parts of England and Wales as well, we will hopefully start to see the cloud break up a touch more compared to what we have seen today, and so more of us should see some of those brighter, maybe even sunnier spells developing at times over the course of the day. We do still have that brisk wind around in places though, still coming in from that southwesterly direction, so temperatures around 9 to 12 degrees Celsius once again, even by day, but that blustery wind will just take the edge off the feel of things a touch when you are stepping outside at times. Into Tuesday, we've got another area of low pressure that is going to be moving its way in, steadily pushing its way in from parts of the southwest. Again, this will be bringing some further strong winds, particularly gales around coastal areas in the west, but also further bands of rain, potentially heavy at times, perhaps mostly affecting Northern Ireland and then steadily pushing its way into Scotland, England and Wales. Still the risk of some showers around, but you've got the greater chance of seeing a few sunnier or brighter spells in there at times. Still though, those strong winds coming in from the south going to field in those milder conditions, but a change in wind direction later in the week means that we will start to see those temperatures dropping down a touch, much cooler for all of us. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Bruce and Paul. We'll help you with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems at all, just message us at gbnews.com/your say, and we'll sort your life out. Well, Paul will. Bruce will attempt to and make a mess of it. But first, let's get some more questions from the audience. Yes, I am rude. It's my right. It's my last show. OK, so let's get a question from Luke. Hi, Luke.
Good evening, Andrew. Just personally, I'd like to say thank you for the show. It means a hell of a lot to a lot of people. me and the other half even had our first date here, so...
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like Cilla Black.
You are. It's fabulous. Right, on to the question. Is
just called Cilla.
Go on.
Is Prince Andrew a bad judge of character?
Thank you. Well, Luke, that's a good question. And this is, of course, because a businessman has been accused of being a Chinese spy, was invited to Buckingham Palace by Prince Andrew. But you know what? Like, I don't think he like, it's not like he's trying to bring Chinese spies into the royal family, is he? It's not,
very dangerously close to feeling slightly sorry for Prince Andrew.
There we go.
I mean, perhaps I shouldn't, but obviously, by the very nature of things, he wouldn't have known that this person was involved in any espionage.
If he's a spy, then he'll keep it to himself, probably.
So, there's a couple of things going on with Andrew that we don't know. You know, how is he funded? He lives quite a wealthy lifestyle, but he's not funded by the king anymore. Perhaps, so there is some speculation. He could be, you know,
gets money from Fergie.
Well,
it's all the royalties from Budgie the helicopter.
Yeah. Maybe she does OnlyFans. I don't know.
Oh wow, that's an image we have to move on from. Bruce, what do you make of this Chinese spy?
I don't suck toes. I think Andrew is fundamentally quite stupid.
Right.
And I think he's easily flattered.
Yes.
And I was actually with him the day he met the Chinese spy. We were at Pizza Express in Woking.
I knew you were involved somehow. Where's Sean? Where's Sean? Hi, Sean. What's your question?
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Is Mr. Donald Trump being victimised by the mainstream media?
Well, OK, that's interesting because he's just sued and won against ABC News, and they're going to pay him $15 million, which is £12 million. And this is because they said he'd been found liable for rape, which was factually not true.
Yes, and he has been victimised. Of course he has. People, it's up to them whether they feel sorry for Donald Trump or not. I'm not sure that he's the sort of character many people feel sorry for. But he was lied about. He's been lied about throughout the campaign. It's so interesting to me to see the way things have turned around now. Lots going in his favour. People are getting... Zuckerberg donated $1 million towards
Yes. I know exactly what you mean, the campaign.
And it's fascinating to me to see that they're all kind of falling into line now.
But it's easy to, like, there's a lot of things that Trump has done that are very easy to criticise, and you don't need to get it wrong. Like, they were alluding to this civil suit, right? But they could have used the right language, they could have got it right, but they've kind of created an open goal for him to sue and win. Like, why can't... This is what I don't get. Like, we've had a lot of people saying that Trump is a fascist and all this sort of stuff. Why not just criticise him for the many, many awful things he said, rather than invent things that he hasn't said?
No, I completely agree with you, and I hate to bring up Nicola Sturgeon in the same sentence, but my point is that a lot of people went after her for her appearance, and it's like there is so much professionally that you can go after her legitimately.
Yes.
So go after people legitimately, legally, and with the right vocabulary, and not make stuff up.
Yeah, absolutely. You remember when they went after Theresa May for those leather boots? And she looked fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and the thing is as well, if you've all that money, why wouldn't you be in Hermes?
There we go. So next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be joined by a whistleblower from a paediatric transgender centre. So you don't want to miss that. Please join us in a couple of minutes.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the latest series of Big Brother has just wrapped up. And as always, the housemates managed to cause a stir.
Yeah, that's an understatement. After 5 weeks of drama and twists and turns, 6 housemates were left to battle it out for a £90,000 prize.
Well, our next guest was there to the bitter end, coming third in this year's competition.
6 weeks you were in there.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a long time.
What goes through your mind? Is it, do you start to go a bit sort of, what do they call it, cabin fever?
Yeah.
Do you go a bit nutty?
Like, at times, not that I've ever been in prison, but I kind of likened it to being in jail, particularly when we were having to eat the porridge with water, no sugar, or, you know, that was difficult. And the feeling that you just can't leave. I mean, you can, but you know, it was, yeah.
You can, but you won't get your hands on that prize money.
No, exactly.
You made it to the end.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big house, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you can get away from housemates if they're annoying you a bit, or does it feel like your hothouse with
no,
people you don't like very much?
If you're sort of, you know, if you're not comfortable with a certain conversation or something like that, you can always take yourself and move away. But can you have time to yourself? No. Not really. I mean, even you might think, do you know what, I'll just go and lock myself in the toilet for a few minutes. There's a camera and there's a mic in there, so you can't escape that. And then you're obviously wearing a mic, so there is that little feeling of, you know, I could just do with having 5 minutes to myself, but you can't really get it.
You've met up with one side of the house, but not the other side yet. But is that still on the cards, do you think?
I hope so, yeah, because I liked every single person in that house, despite a few whispers on the internet, you know, like, do you not like this? I liked everybody in the house, never had a bad word with anybody, so...
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Jamie Reed. Jamie worked in over 100 gender clinics across the US, treating children with gender dysphoria. However, after a career spent counselling, she came to the view that the lack of protocols and safeguards in place were unacceptable. And so Jamie blew the whistle. Jamie, welcome to Free Speech Nation. Thanks very much for joining us. Perhaps if you could just start by giving us a background into the kind of work that you were doing.
Yes, so I worked in a pediatric transgender center here in St. Louis, Missouri as a case manager, and I was also running clinical research trials.
And what kind of things started to happen that made you concerned?
Very similar to Tavistock. So kind of three different main issues. We saw an exponential rise, so a huge increase in the number of patients coming. The patients were incredibly different from the initial cohort that we expected. So these were almost all teenage girls, and they had significant mental health comorbidities. So they were just a completely different profile of kid, and the numbers just exploded on us.
So given those comorbidities and given that all of this was quite evident to the people working there, why did they persist with these treatments when there were clearly some psychotherapeutic routes that should have been taken?
I think that's the million-dollar question. Why are clinics across the world continuing with these treatments when we've seen a totally new cohort and we've seen the harms that are coming from them? But I think at the end of the day, the clinicians that I worked with were rooted more in the ideology and the concept around being kind and taking care of these kids instead of looking at the root science and what was right in front of our eyes, which was a brand new cohort and treatments that weren't working.
So before you actually blew the whistle, were you able to have any conversations with other members of staff or were there any attempts within the system to try and change it?
Oh, money. So there were debates and arguments probably for 2 to 3 years. And one of the most difficult was towards the end. I had a phone call with the primary endocrinologist that I worked with, and I said to him, we are harming these kids. And his reply was, yes, I know. What do you want me to do about it? He could not see a way to stop the machine. It just kept spiraling.
That is absolutely astonishing that he admitted that to you. And then you blew the whistle. What happened then?
So I filed a formal affidavit with the state attorney general in the state of Missouri. They opened an investigation, and within a year's time, the state legislature had completely stopped these treatments in the entirety of the state. So there's no current gender clinics with pediatric care being offered in the state of Missouri.
Of course, we've seen the recent Supreme Court case that's going on, and there's a lot of pushback here as increasingly states in the US are banning these kinds of treatments. Do you think the tide has turned on this issue?
No, not by any means. So we actually have a almost completely split 50-50 map here in the US. And this is so entrenched and become such a cultural war that we are going to see potentially after the Supreme Court ruling, which I do think is going to be in favor of Tennessee, that we are going to have a state-by-state fight across the map in the US. And I don't think we've even reached the tipping point in how difficult this is going to be for the gay and lesbian community, for the parents of kids who are still distressed, and for the clinicians that are still working in these clinics. This is not far from over here in the US.
I've spoken to a number of detransitioners on this show, people who have gone through the procedure and regretted it and said that they were either coerced or pressurised into it by medical practitioners. Ultimately, there will be a lot of lawsuits. Do you think that will be the thing that maybe turns the tide?
The United States is definitely litigious, and definitely we use a lot of court rulings to see change. So yes, we just recently had another large detransitioner lawsuit with a young woman named Clementine, who has sued one of the biggest gender clinicians here in the US. Unfortunately, I think you're correct. In the US, this is going to come down to a lot of litigious fights, and a lot of large settlements are what's going to be needed to get some of these hospitals to recognize the risk that they have on their hands.
It's very interesting when you talk about your experience within the clinics that a lot of people, or the members of staff there, are fully aware of the dangers involved, but are too afraid to speak out. You've blown the whistle. What kind of reaction have you had?
It's been very mixed. So I was immediately painted by local press as a right-wing bigot, which is very far from the situation. I'm a out lesbian. My spouse at the time was a trans man who is now desisted and detransitioned. I'm a long-term Democrat here in the US. There was a lot of painting me as having to have come from one kind of ideology to be willing to speak the truth. But I've also found that there are huge segments of the US population, including in the gay and lesbian community, that absolutely understand these treatments for what they are and have been actively fighting against those. The US is just a very challenging environment to work in when your issue somehow goes across these political lines.
But do you think that the Cass report has made a difference? I know that a number of organisations such as WPATH have tried to ignore what Dr. Cass had to say. But do you think ultimately scientific evidence will win out?
Oh, I hope so. It is my true belief that scientific evidence in the end is how we should be making public policy. We shouldn't be driving public policy on ideology or activism. It needs to be rooted in science and data. I hoped that the Cass report would have a bigger splash here in the US than it has. Perhaps when you and Graham and some others come over to the US, you can help us out with this a little bit further. But we still really have not had the days of reckoning that we've seen come out of England.
Absolutely. Well, Jamie, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. Good luck with everything, and I'll see you over in America.
Perfect. We're welcoming you and excited to have you.
So it's very interesting, isn't it, that people who do blow the whistle, they're taking a real risk, aren't they?
Incredibly so. And it's interesting. I mean, the bravery there must have been astonishing from someone from her position, from, from her sexual orientation, from her background as a Democrat voter, working in that kind of clinic to be able to stand up. But the thing I found most astonishing about that was when she did blow the whistle, seniors to her said, "We know it's a problem. We know we're affecting children. What can you do?"
Absolutely. Well, look, there's lots more to come between now and 9 o'clock, so don't go anywhere.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you have had a good evening, although we have started to see a band of rain push its way into northern and western areas of Scotland. Some quite squally winds around this evening as this continues to move its way in. It will turn quite persistent for western areas of Scotland, in particular the Highlands, seeing a lot of rainfall during this forthcoming night. Generally drier further towards the south, but quite a lot of cloud around. Blustery still in amongst all of that. Those southwesterly winds filtering in some quite mild air, so most of us will hold up around 9 or 11 degrees Celsius as you start off Monday morning. This rain band will still be in place throughout much of the day on Monday, and so really we will see those rainfall totals really tossing up, potentially half a month's worth of rain quite widely across areas of western Scotland. Snow melt as well underneath those mild temperatures will provide further flooding impacts in places as well, so do take care, and a rain warning is in force. Generally though, for Northern Ireland, parts of England and Wales as well, we will hopefully start to see the cloud break up a touch more compared to what we have seen today, and so more of us should see some of those brighter, maybe even sunnier spells developing at times over the course of the day. We do still have that brisk wind around in places though, still coming in from that southwesterly direction, so temperatures around 9 to 12 degrees Celsius once again, even by day, but that blustery wind will just take the edge off the feel of things a touch when you are stepping outside at times. Into Tuesday, we've got another area of low pressure that is going to be moving its way in, steadily pushing its way in from parts of the southwest. Again, this will be bringing some further strong winds, particularly gales around coastal areas in the west, but also further bands of rain, potentially heavy at times, perhaps mostly affecting Northern Ireland and then steadily pushing its way into Scotland. England and Wales, still the risk of some showers around, but you've got the greater chance of seeing a few sunnier or brighter spells in there at times. Still though, those strong winds coming in from the south going to field in those milder conditions, but a change in wind direction later in the week means that we will start to see those temperatures dropping down a touch, much cooler for all of us. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joining me now is food historian and author of Christmas with Dickens, Pen Vogler. Pen, let's start with Christmas Carol. Did A Christmas Carol change Britain's view of Christmas?
I think it did, enormously. Before then, people were beginning to think, as they do now, that Christmas might be being a little bit commercial. It was too much food and drink, not enough kind of seriousness or not enough kind of love and family. And what Dickens did with A Christmas Carol was show people who were coming to the cities, who were kind of losing their rural history, a new way of celebrating Christmas, that a real, just a family could get together and love and kind of get around the table together. And whereas before, a lot of those kind of Christmas dishes would have been seasonal, lots of people would have eaten them at different times of the year, Dickens does two things. He takes the goose, which is what the Cratchits are going to eat, and he turns it to a turkey, much bigger, meatier, kind of more generous. And then he takes this thing that he never calls Christmas pudding in A Christmas Carol. There's no Christmas pudding. He only calls it plum pudding, and he anchors it to that day. And interestingly, after then, people start publishing recipes for Christmas pudding, and it starts getting its name, Christmas pudding, from plum pudding. And I think all of that really comes from A Christmas Carol.
you say, becomes a Christmas pudding almost immediately after A Christmas Carol is published.
Yes, I mean, it's occasionally called Christmas pudding before, but not often. And then a very famous for the time, the kind of Delia Smith of her day, lady called Eliza Acton, publishes a recipe called The Author's Christmas Pudding in 1845. And we know she's a big Dickens fan because she sent a copy of her cookbook to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
And there's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week. But let's get a news update first from Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you very much. The top stories this hour. The UK has announced £50 million of humanitarian aid for vulnerable Syrians across the Middle East after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad's regime. The Foreign Office says the emergency support will be delivered through the UN and NGO agencies to people in the country, as well as to refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. Britain yesterday joined talks in Aqaba, hosted by Jordan and attended by ministers and delegates. £30 million will be channelled within Syria for food, shelter and emergency healthcare, whilst £10 million will go to the World Food Programme in Lebanon and £10 million to the WFP and the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR in Jordan. The intervention comes a week after the collapse of the Assad regime.
We want to see a Syrian-led and a Syrian-owned future, and we want one that is representative and inclusive. That is what partners in the region and allies, close allies, signed up to yesterday, and that's what we'll be encouraging.
In other news, Labour has claimed a record pace for removing migrants from the UK, but channel crossings are still at an all-time high. The Home Office says nearly 13,500 people have been removed since Labour's election win in July. That's the most in any six-month period since 2019. However, the number of channel crossings continues to rise, with over 21,000 migrants arriving by small boat, including a record 609 on Thursday. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says Labour is intensifying border security and cracking down on illegal working. However, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says it's Labour who are failing to control the borders.
I'm not going to run away from the subject of immigration. I never have. Labour are pretending that they're tough on immigration when actually they stopped us from doing quite a lot of things. It wasn't just the fact that we had a majority in the Commons. We did not have a majority in the Lords. So a lot of legislation, the Rwanda legislation, even when we were putting it through, it was getting blocked elsewhere. So I'm not going to have Keir Starmer, who wanted foreign criminals to stay in this country, actively stop them from being deported, pretend that he is Mr. Immigration.
A tribunal has ruled that an alleged Chinese spy linked to the Duke of York and two former prime ministers did pose a national security risk. The businessman, known only as H6, was barred from the UK last year after reportedly infiltrating high-profile circles, including attending events with David Cameron and Theresa May. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says Britain must maintain economic ties with China, but will act strongly against security threats. Critics, including Nigel Farage, are calling for the man to be named. The Duke of York insists no sensitive matters were ever discussed, though, and he says all contact stopped following government advice. Now, slight gear change, just in case you wanted to know, that Brussels sprouts will be 25% bigger this year, according to Tesco. They say that good growing conditions and new, hardier varieties have resulted in the best crop that they've had in recent years. Well, just in case you did want to know, the average sprout this year is 30 millimetres in diameter. That's up from 24 last year. Well, last year, heavy rainfall in late November and December meant the sprout yield was lower than average. I happen to be a fan of Brussels sprouts, so that's good news for me. That's the latest news for now. More later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So we've got a lovely studio audience here. Let's get some questions. Our first question is from Jet Jet.
Do you think that it's a woman's right to do whatever she wants with her body?
Now, I presume, Jet, you're talking about the Lily Phillips
Yes,
story.
I am.
Now, obviously, for people who don't know, Lily Phillips, OnlyFans star, had sex with 100 men in one day. What do you think of that?
I think it's a bit shocking, isn't it, really? I thought it was 1,000 men that she wanted to do.
She wants to now. So
Yeah,
she's
I
done
think-
100, now the next goal is 1,000. Making a lot of money, of course. But the debate is now about, you know, what kind of culture have we produced? Well, that's the way...
It's not a good look, is it?
It's not ideal, no. Well, it's more than not a good look. I mean, what does it say about young women that they think this is how they have to
That's
make
right.
the money, you know?
Yeah, not a good role model.
It's not ideal.
No.
Thank you, Jet. What do you think, Paul?
Look, I'm gonna try and give it some sort of a serious approach before we go to Bruce. So...
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
Look, everybody consented to this. Everybody involved. Lily Phillips consented. I assume, well, of course, the men consented.
The mother, who is her manager.
The mother, who is her manager, consented. OnlyFans would have consented, of course, because they would have been taking a percentage of her earnings. However, when you step back from this, the morality of it is something of a challenge. The idea of sleeping with 100 men in one day purely for money is not a good look when you look from your future self perspective. That she hopefully she'll go on if she wishes to, has a family, and she'll be Googleable for the rest of her life as the 23-year-old who slept with 100
clearly,
men.
I mean, she's not regretting it. If she's going to now attempt 1,000, and I mean, isn't the point that she, you know, is it fair to say that she's likely a damaged person if this is how she feels she wants to make her money?
I don't know the answer to that. This is a strange place for empowerment to have found itself. So what we're looking at now is some, I don't know, fourth or fifth wave of feminism, where essentially women can do anything they like with their body, including laying it open to 100 geezers in one afternoon. But it still asks a lot of questions, and you say that she didn't seem too affected. I saw the documentary guy interviewing her afterwards, and she was quite tearful. She felt very detached from herself. So,
but as you say, she made the choice.
She did make the choice, and it's made her a lot of money.
But just because someone makes a choice, just because she consented, just because all of the men involved consented, that doesn't mean that people don't have the right to judge them morally.
No, absolutely. She's opened it up to the public, and many people will judge it. Most people will judge them.
Bruce, what do you think?
So, I know you think I'm going to give a flippant answer. I don't. She obviously, unless she was forced into it, this was her decision. And obviously something that she'd spoken to her mother about.
Well, they work together on this.
Well, she's the finance manager. So then if you think about the Kim Kardashian sex tape and how Kris Jenner had parlayed that into $1 billion fortune, people can judge all they want. Ultimately, this is this girl's decision, unless she's had a gun to her head or whatever. So there was a girl...
But you shouldn't let the men off the hook as well. I mean, they're complicit in this, aren't they?
But complicit in what? This is what I don't understand. I'm not necessarily saying it's something that I would do. I mean, you know, as was pointed out, I may have gained a bit of weight. Thank you for that. But the fact of the matter is, what is morally wrong with the men? Do you remember a documentary called Paddington Green?
No.
Right, OK, so it was set here in Paddington, so you should. And there was a working girl called Jackie, and she didn't seem to have any power over the fact that she was a sex worker, and she was constantly having unprotected sex and having to go for tests and all this kind of thing. This girl doesn't seem to be a victim in any way. Whether you like what she's done or not, that's completely up to you. And of course you can judge her. I mean, you're the father of a daughter. I would imagine that you're not hoping that that's what your daughter would become known for.
Correct.
But there was a girl, was it Chloe Sim from The Only Way is Essex?
I mean, that's not a show I'm familiar with. Bruce.
Well, OK, but it is a show, Andrew. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You're interrupting me, and I know it's your last day, but we are done. And she went to America, funnily enough, and she's a huge OnlyFans person. So what are you really going over for?
Well...
Yes.
Well, you can find out more on my website.
Because your mum's going as well, and she's good with a calculator. No, I
So, let's move on to a question from Mario. Mario.
Yes, hello, I'm Mario, and funny enough, my question is about a Luigi.
Do you Super Mario Brothers theme?
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's right that Luigi Mangione has become a heartthrob, the anti-hero culture?
Yeah, well, what do you think about this? Obviously, this is the suspect, we should say the suspect, in the murder that happened in New York. What do you think of this?
Is it extreme fame-seeking?
Well, I mean, who can say? Because there's an odd thing, isn't there, when there are killers and serial killers and that kind of thing who get a lot of attention. People write letters to them in prison and that kind of thing. But there's something weird about this, isn't there, Paul? He killed the head of a health company, didn't he?
Luigi Mangione.
Yeah, well, it's a suspect. It's alleged at the moment. It hasn't been a trial yet.
He did, and...
Well, alleged.
This alleged...
Yes.
Alleged. He's got a manifesto, so...
so does Labour.
Yes.
Allegedly.
But there hasn't been a trial. Let's respect due process.
No,
but
absolutely.
The point is that a lot of people on the left, including people like Taylor Lorenz, that commentator, basically cheering on murder. I mean, that's what's weird about this. People are saying that there seems to be a complete dearth of basic human empathy from a lot of these left-wing commentators. Someone's been shot dead. Couldn't you just say whether I agree with them or not? That's not acceptable. That's a basic level thing.
And I read Tom Slater's article in Spike this week, which his story emanates from, and I agree with him. This is depraved. Okay, So the facts are. A young man with a gun, for whatever reason, shot a CEO in the back, and he's a family man, father of 2 children, wife at home. He did not deserve to be punished in this way. Now, the US health system is full of pit holes, and it works its way particularly against the poorest in America. There are a lot of questions there to be answered. This is not the way to answer them.
Well, I just wonder whether it's a sign that the dehumanising stance that a lot of people have taken, I have to say, particularly on the left, has meant that they no longer care if people die so long as they disagree with them. That is a real problem, I think.
Yeah, they see everyone else. They dehumanise everyone they disagree with.
And they think they're monsters, and therefore they think they can die, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You see this all the time when, for instance, when Magdalene Burns, the feminist activist, died, lots of trans activists were celebrating this woman's death from a brain tumour. And you think, how far have you gone in your political echo chamber that you are cheering on death? Because at that point, I think you've lost all your basic humanity.
That's because it's not their politics, it's their way of life. They embody everything they believe. So on a programme like this, and on many other programmes, and at Spiked and GB News, people will debate the issues.
Yeah.
These people don't debate the issues, they live the issues, and they take it as an offence against themselves personally, should anyone challenge them.
It would never occur to me to celebrate for the death of someone, even if I fundamentally disagree with everything they said. I can't square this with being a normal human being.
I completely agree with you. There's loads of people I hate, and I know I keep that to myself, and I keep it really quiet, I don't wish death on them. That's the whole thing. And I remember being in a green room and speaking about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, and I was told I was being ridiculous about what I'd said to them, and I hate to mention it for the 3rd time. If that was Nicola Sturgeon, you would have been up in arms. And people would have been going around with panty pads on their lobes as marks of sympathy and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
But just because you don't like that man doesn't mean he deserves to die in that way.
Shouldn't be a controversial thing to say, should it?
I was ostracised. I'm not naming the club. It was in Glasgow.
Well, I think we can work out which club that was. Let's move on now to a question from Bob. Where's Bob?
Hi, good evening.
What about you, Bob?
Good luck in your future endeavours, Andrew. Keep up the fight. Should we celebrate the British Empire?
Well, that's an interesting question. We've had this history professor this week they cancelled his lecture in New Zealand. It's New Zealand's National Library, because the staff asked him to remove a quotation. They were worried it might be seen as agreeing with the empire. Do you think that the academics should have any references to their speeches removed if they say something like that?
I think more generally, I just think, what was the alternative? I mean, we didn't get everything right. There's no denying that. But what was the alternative? A French empire, a German empire, a Japanese empire?
So this is an interesting point, isn't it, Paul? Because there have been a lot of empires, and the Ottoman Empire, for instance, gets a lot less attention than the British Empire. I mean, I would say that all empires commit atrocities, generally speaking, and should be criticised for it. But why this focus on the British Empire?
I really don't know. I mean, this was in New Zealand, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And this guy was talking... This guy is with 30 years scholar of this particular subject matter, and was talking about it, and quoting another historian, by the way. And essentially, it's not agreeing that the British Empire was a great idea, the way we went around the world and did the things that we did, but it's educating people. This is the point of lecturing. People are supposed to go along, listen, learn and engage. If we take out the facts,
Yeah, but more
what
to
do
the
we end
point,
up with?
what kind of university or company or body or whatever this thing was, the library, I mean, how entitled must you be to say to a visiting speaker, we don't like that line, cut that out? It's like, mind your own business.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if someone told you to say, come and do stand-up, but don't say that bit you say about the nuns or whatever it is you do, then what would you say?
I'd say OK. I think the biggest atrocity of the British Empire is I'm still waiting on a damehood. So, yeah, that's the...
It will happen.
I agree with you with the whole censorship thing, because you wouldn't turn up to do a gig and be told what to say.
No, it's absolutely astonishing, isn't it? But I do remember a friend of mine, who's no longer a friend, of course, because I'm now a far-right bigot or whatever they call me.
Which you are.
Yeah, of course. But he once was offered a gig, and it was quite well paid, but they sent him a list of the things he couldn't joke about in advance. So
and he did it?
He used that as the set list for the show,
okay.
yeah. But, which I think is the only way to deal with that. I think if someone is telling you these are the things you can and cannot say, then we need to say them all the more, don't we? I think that has to be like a general rule. It's the same as when someone says you shouldn't read a book or they try and ban a book. That's the first book you should read. Like, I always... If someone's trying to ban a book, I'll go out and read it 100% straight away, and that's the advice I would give to absolutely everyone. We've got to have... It's enough of this, right?
Yeah.
Other people trying to control the way you think and the things that you say and the things that you read and the words that you hear. We need to just stop taking it from those people. We need to push back on those people. That's what this show's all about, I suppose. Let's move on to a question from Jason. Jason, how are you?
Good, thank you. Were the Vikings transgender?
I mean, it always comes back to that, doesn't it? Do you think they were, Jason?
Well, the male ones were very manly. And the female ones were also very manly.
Yeah.
So maybe just the women were transgender.
Did the women wear the horns on the head as well?
I don't know. I think they were all copying each other, so...
OK. You're, of course, an expert in Nordic history, aren't you?
No.
No. Well, this doesn't come out of anywhere, by the way. It's not that Jason's a lunatic and we've just invited him in. There is actually a story this week. There was a historian who specialises in gender and sexuality. She's made this claim that there were transgender Vikings that ransacked Scotland 1,000 years ago. I mean, well,
do you know who one was? Nicola Sturgeon. That's just a fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see her in a horny hat. I mean, I can. I think no, but she's got that kind of, Hagar the Horrible look about her, hasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember those adverts for Skull Lager or whatever it was. Yes.
That's an interesting...
horny hat. Horny and Heart Hell is our new book.
It should be. What do you make of this? I mean, look, basically, activists are always trying to, trans everything, aren't
Of course they are. And now the Vikings, we've got to the part of the trans ideology debate where they're just attaching themselves to anyone.
Anything. I mean, they couldn't be more butch, the Vikings, could they?
Well, exactly. And, I mean, what are they proud of? The raping and pillaging? What?
Why would you claim them?
Exactly.
They were horrible.
Unbelievable stuff. But, that's the way we're going.
OK, well, enough of that madness. Next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking to a man who's being investigated by Icelandic police for expressing his views online. Please, don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Robert Walton has been jet-setting in recent weeks in Singapore for the YYY Awards and then back to London to host the inaugural Restaurant Association Awards.
Yep, and after many years in the industry, Robert also knows a thing or two about how to create the perfect Christmas. And it's all in the preparation. So we're going to be asking him about that as well. I'm delighted to say that the godfather of hospitality, Robert Walton, MBE, joins us now on the sofa.
Morning, Robert.
Robert,
Good
so
morning.
good to see you. And what a busy few weeks you have had. Should we start with the YYY Awards? Because I think it's just wonderful who you celebrated at those awards.
So, the YYY, young chef, young waiter, young mixologist. And it's a competition that's created around the world. So people from all around the world can apply. So this year we had 9 countries, from India to the Caribbean, from the USA to Scotland and England. And so we had 27 young professionals. The average age was about 24.
Wow.
All coming to Singapore. So we flew everyone to Singapore. We create what I call the Olympic Village. We create a little village for them, and it's in a very cool spot with great bars. And then we have the competition. And this year, I can now announce, I was here just a few weeks ago before we had the competition, that the USA won, which was absolutely incredible. Thailand was second. And gorgeous Wales was third.
Yes. Well done,
Gorgeous
Wales.
Well done, Wales.
We now expect to have a good meal. There's no reason why you shouldn't have good food. The key now is the service, because there's no reason why you don't have good service. And good service is not that difficult. Smile to start with. It really isn't that difficult. It's called hospitable. We call the industry, or the sector we look after is the hospitality industry, which is all about being hospitable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. An activist in Iceland, Elder Christensen, chairman of Samtökin 22, a gender-critical organisation that supports single-sex spaces and opposes the medical transitioning of children, is being investigated by police over 7 posts he shared on Facebook and X, where he expressed criticism of male breastfeeding and the teaching of gender diversity to children. He's faced questioning by the police, and although not yet charged, his solicitors expect he will be charged and convicted. So I'm joined now by gay rights activist Elder Christensen. Elder, perhaps you could start by... I mean, this sounds like an extraordinary story. Perhaps you can start by explaining what it is you tweeted or put on X or whatever we're calling it these days.
This tweet in question with the breastfeeding, I believe it was put, I believe I tweeted it in August of last year. It was a Pink News article which was telling us, the reader, how wonderful it is for men or trans women to be able to breastfeed and why it's good for mom and baby. And I put forward a staunch criticism of that, and I wrote, you know, that rag, meaning Pink News, you know, advocating for such practices, because if you think about male breastfeeding, then obviously it's the man cannot carry a child nor give birth to it. So what is the motivator behind a man actually taking drugs, domperidone, to induce lactation, to breastfeed a child whose needs is
exactly
whose needs are being satisfied here? Is it the needs of the infant, or is it the needs of that person who is taking the drugs and trying to breastfeed an infant?
And of course, your criticism was very robust, and you said that it was a form of child abuse, and
yes,
that there was a fetishistic aspect.
Yes,
to this.
I used the P word, pedophilia, in this context, because, and I stand by it, because if you do use, or if you are not a gynophile, and which is a sexual fetish, and if you are using infants or children, for that matter, to satisfy your sexual fetishes, it's pedophilia.
So, I mean, critics will say, well, we don't know the secret motivations of anyone, and that's an assumption that you're making. Well, but yes. But then the question is, you know, that doesn't mean it ought to be criminal.
No.
To make that supposition.
No, of course it shouldn't. But here we are. We are in this situation now where I'm being charged for it. But I am actually quite happy to be charged for that specific tweet, because it just shows what sort of how morally bankrupt this queer movement has become.
And this is a real problem, isn't it? Because people won't believe you when you say that men who identify as women are taking drugs to induce lactation.
Yeah.
The quality of that milk, if we call it milk, is nowhere near what is required.
I wouldn't even go so far to call it milk. It's just.
It's something which is clearly putting children at risk. I mean, that's absolutely clear that there's an element of that to that. So this is about satisfying this movement, this ideological movement, rather than what is good for child well-being.
That is my honest opinion. It is to satisfy the movement. It's to satisfy some ideological need.
Yes.
You know, and this has nothing to do with the needs of the children or the infant.
So let's move the debate away from the breastfeeding aspect, because of course there will be arguments on all sides there. I mean, I'm with you. I don't think there's any way that you should be prioritising someone's identity over the welfare of a baby. That just, for me, is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But irrespective of that, there will be people that disagree with my position on that.
Yeah.
But then we have the issue of the fact that the police have got involved at all. Your lawyer says that he thinks it's likely you're going to be convicted.
Yes, the thing is, the Icelandic state apparatus is completely captured from top down. I mean, currently we have a situation where all schools are captured. Even the Church of Iceland is captured. The Bishop of Iceland has a trans-identified child. So does her sister. And this is a country of 377,000 people. And
what about the government?
Government as well. Local government especially is captured on the school level as well.
Well, what charge are the police saying that they're levelling against?
So it's the breach of our Criminal Code Article 233, which is, you know, a derogatory language, you know, against a protected group.
So it's quite similar to the sort of hate speech laws that we've had over here.
Yeah.
OK, but, you know, so they're going to prosecute you.
Well, I haven't been officially charged yet, but like my solicitor says, I can expect being charged relatively soon. And there are two other people who have been charged for, yeah, I would say probably around the same sort of statements that I have been making. Two teachers, one high school teacher, he criticized the indoctrination in the schools. And said that this was obviously to recruit children to an ideology and obviously ideological grooming. In Iceland, they take the word grooming very, very, let's say, they get very upset when you use the word grooming. But the thing is, what they don't realize is grooming isn't only sexual, and there is ideological grooming as well. And we have loads of ideological grooming happening in the school system.
But ultimately, it comes down to free speech. You know, when I speak to Americans about the situation in the UK, they can't believe that people in the UK are arrested for tweets, let alone that the police would even get involved whatsoever, even if they're really offensive and horrible. You know, because they have their First Amendment.
Exactly.
We don't have that. So what's the state of free speech in Iceland generally?
Well, I thought it was relatively good up until now, and I'm quite shocked that I have been, you know, put under criminal investigation because nothing in my tweets has any form of incitement. I do not attack anyone personally, and I don't even think that I'm attacking a specific group. I am actually criticizing an ideology,
which is your right,
a set of ideas, and I'm just communicating my honest opinion. And I thought in a free democratic society that is something that you should be able to do. And I would like to add, throughout my activism in Iceland, I have on numerous occasions asked the organization, the LGBTQI++ organization, to actually meet me in a debate, and if they are so sure about their arguments, then obviously it would be easy for them to bury me, you know, and just expose me for the idiot that they think that I am.
Yes,
right?
But they don't tend to debate.
And I've had numerous podcast hosts and radio hosts in Iceland been willing to step in as moderators. My only demand has been that it's live and is unedited.
Yeah.
And they won't show up. They've agreed to show up twice during the last 5 years, but on the last minute, they pull out.
But this is the strategy of ideologues, no debate.
Yes.
Because if their ideas are held up to scrutiny, they tend to collapse.
That's the thing.
So what will happen, just finally, because I think this is a really shocking story, and there have been many on this show, as you know, we've had a lot of this kind of thing, but it's interesting to hear it from another country as well, that it's not just a UK issue. If you are convicted, what's the potential penalty?
Well, it's either a monetary fine or up to 2 years in prison. And I've actually said to my solicitor that if they are going to put a monetary fine on me, I'm not going to pay it. They will have to chuck me in.
So
and I would be happy to go to prison.
Wow. So you could indeed end up serving prison time for an opinion, a legitimate opinion. Yeah, unbelievable. OK, well, do keep us posted on this. It's a really important story. Elder, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shocking stuff. Next, though, on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be looking at the state of free speech here in the UK with the barrister Sarah Phillimore. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, very good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you have had a good evening, although we have started to see a band of rain push its way into northern and western areas of Scotland. Some quite squally winds around this evening. As this continues to move its way in, it will turn quite persistent for western areas of Scotland, in particular the Highlands, seeing a lot of rainfall during this forthcoming night. Generally drier further towards the south, but quite a lot of cloud around. Blustery still in amongst all of that. Those southwesterly winds filtering in, some quite mild air, so most of us will hold up around 9 or 11 degrees Celsius as you start off Monday morning. This rain band will still be in place throughout much of the day on Monday, and so really we will see those rainfall totals really tossing up, potentially half a month's worth of rain quite widely across areas of western Scotland. Snowmelt as well underneath those mild temperatures will provide further flooding impacts in places as well, so do take care, and a rain warning is in force. Generally though, for Northern Ireland, parts of England and Wales as well, we will hopefully start to see the cloud break up a touch more compared to what we have seen today, and so more of us should see some of those brighter, maybe even sunnier spells developing at times over the course of the day. We do still have that brisk wind around in places though, still coming in from that southwesterly direction, so temperatures around 9 to 12 degrees Celsius once again, even by day, but that blustery wind will just take the edge off the feel of things a touch when you are stepping outside at times. Into Tuesday, we've got another area of low pressure that is going to be moving its way in, steadily pushing its way in from parts of the southwest. Again, this will be bringing some further strong winds, particularly gales around coastal areas in the west, but also further bands of rain, potentially heavy at times, perhaps mostly affecting Northern Ireland, and then steadily pushing its way into Scotland, England and Wales. Still the risk of some showers around, but you've got the greater chance of seeing a few sunnier or brighter spells in there at times. Still though, those strong winds coming in from the south going to field in those milder conditions, but a change in wind direction later in the week means that we will start to see those temperatures dropping down a touch, much cooler for all of us. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So a lot of what we discussed this evening, as the name would suggest, revolves around free speech, whether it's the press regulator upholding complaints against The Spectator or historians being censored when discussing the British Empire. So it's increasingly clear that there are threats to free speech in the UK. One of my regular guests is back to join me to explain what's happening at the moment, and it is the lawyer and author Sarah Phillimore. You were slapped with a non-crime hate incident. Do you want to tell us what you did wrong?
Well, I actually had 3, and they got increasingly more bizarre, and I never would have known about it. I mean, this is the big thing against non-crime hate incidents. You weren't told. Had not the person who reported me helpfully boasted about it on Twitter, as it then was. Well, they can't resist it, can they? Yeah. They said, "You've got a record of life for your hate, Phillimore." I thought, oh, have I? So I made a data subject access request of Wiltshire, and I got the most astonishing 12 pages of tweets. And my absolute favourite remains so to this day. Picture my dog as a little puppy on the kitchen floor looking cute, and I captioned it, "My dog would call me a Nazi for cheese."
And that is an official non-crime hate incident.
Oh, not only that, it was recorded. The top of the form said, Sarah Phillimore, a barrister posting hate. Then it put all my personal details in. My puppy was under the heading of hatred towards transgender individuals.
Well, I mean, they're making a leap in their own minds there, I think, in that case. But this is... so anyone can request the information kept about them by the police. It's not just because you're a lawyer. Anyone can do this.
Well, yes, technically, but I've had some horrible reports of people saying they've tried to make that request and they've been refused. And I've always said, well, take it to the Information Commissioner, because that's the law. You make a request for your sensitive personal information that an organisation...
Yeah. Goodness knows what I've got. But the thing about it is, as you say, the police they're practising this idea of non-crime hate incidents, something that was implemented by the College of Policing in 2014. They said we should be recording non-crime. There doesn't have to be any evidence of hate even to record it. It does show up in disclosure and barring service checks, so it can have an effect on your career. Doesn't this just mean that anyone in the country can weaponise the system against people because they have a grudge?
But, Andrew, I've got such a horrible sense of déjà vu. I thought we'd been here, done that. When Harry Miller won in the Court of Appeal in December 2021, it was on exactly that basis. This is ridiculous. All you were doing is weaponising the malicious. The person who complained about Harry was described by a judge in one of the court cases as on the outer edges of rationality.
And let's just remind people that Harry had just retweeted a poem that someone was offended by.
On the list of the tweets that got reported was one where he said, huh? And there was another one when he mentioned Jenny Murray. So this was why it was so ridiculous. And he won in the Court of Appeal, quite rightly. There was then a parliamentary code of practice that essentially said you've got to be aware of Article 10 of the European Convention, freedom of speech, and you've got to use your common sense, and you've got to stop doing victim perception recording. And, by the way, stop calling them victims, because Harry got a big sheet of paper saying the victim,
yes,
and he was the perpetrator. There's no such thing. So we thought we'd won that. And Harry was thinking, oh, you know, I can wind Fair Cop down, get my life back. But then, as you said, they seem to be sneaking back in by the back door. The present government has said we want more of them. Alison Pearson gets 2 people knocking on her door after a tweet she deleted a year ago.
Yes, and in that case, she was corrected because she said, who is my accuser? And the police said, no, it's the victim. So it's exactly what you're talking about. But, you know, you've been working with Fair Cop and Harry Miller there, and you've been doing a lot of work with this. But when I last spoke to Toby Young from the Free Speech Union, he said that non-crime hate incidents have gone up since you were successful in the High Court.
But this is the absolute absurdity. In the Court of Appeal, the College of Policing barrister said, we've absolutely got to be recording this. It's really essential operational intelligence for the police. And he was asked a question by one of the judges, well, how many are there? And he said, well, I think there's about 250,000. Yeah, there's far too many for the police to actually analyse.
Right.
So they've just shot their argument right in the foot.
Yes.
So it's really concerning we're coming back again. I mean, I know this is going to be your last show, and I think we don't want to get complacent. I mean, it is still really sad that for so long you've been the only person doing this. But I think we have achieved a lot. It's baby steps. I think we go 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yes.
I mean, the fact that the Free Speech Union has grown to be such a mighty force.
Yes, and a necessary one.
So it's easy to get despondent. I'm just thinking, why am I even having this conversation with you? We knocked this on the head in the Court of Appeal. You know, Harry at massive emotional and financial cost to himself.
Yes, and also you've had successive Home Secretaries telling the College of Policing you can't do this anymore, and they're just ignored. So isn't that the worry that actually the ideology is so deeply embedded within groups like the College of Policing that even if we voted in the government that wanted to get rid of them the most, they wouldn't be able to?
But what's different now, I mean, thanks to people like you and Harry, the people who've made the efforts, is we can be talking about it. I mean, I know I keep saying this, it's almost become a cliche, but if Maya and Harry hadn't taken and won their cases, all of us in this room would be at risk of arrest.
And that's Maya for starter, of course, yes.
We would have no protection, because to say a man can't be a woman would not be protected in a democratic society, is something you were allowed to say. If Harry hadn't won, then the police would be allowed to come and knock on the door of any of us after any malicious complaint by a mad person. So we can't get complacent, because clearly there's still battles to be fought. But when you started 3.5 years ago, as opposed to now...
It was a lot worse, yes.
Loads more people are speaking out, saying this is absurd, and they're being allowed to speak out.
I mean, is it just maybe that a lot of people didn't realise it was going on. I think...
Oh, absolutely, the non-crime hate instance. Well, like I say, if that bloke hadn't boasted, because I didn't just have one, I had 3, and they got progressively more absurd. My favourite was the last one, because once I'd found out what was going on...
Yes.
Do you remember that awful video of a police officer with painted cheeks dancing at a Pride festival?
So many that I...
Well, this was a particularly cringe one, because he was going around sort of blowing things in people's faces, and they would go, "Ooh, get off." And anyway, I retweeted that, as it was then, and I captioned it, "My designated hate crimes officer on the way to report my further offences."
Yes.
So that was reported as a hate instance. I thought, this is getting deliciously meta. At that stage, I was just laughing. But it isn't funny, because I had to raise nearly £50,000 via crowdfunding to actually deal with this.
Yes.
They were resisting the whole way. I said, delete it. You're making yourself a laughing stock. You can't do this. You're the police.
Isn't this just about a broader point about the way in which a lot of the people in authority have bought into the idea that when people say unpleasant, hateful things, that needs to be stopped because it can spread like a toxin throughout society, when the truth is human beings have always said hateful things, and that's part of the marketplace of ideas, and the cost of free speech is that we have to deal with the fact that sometimes we hear horrible things.
I mean, I'm afraid that is the tragedy. Human species are not very nice, but the people pushing this, we must stamp out hate, have been doing it for 10 years now, and has it got any better?
Well, it can't, because they can't undo human evolutionary history.
So human beings are still nasty, and they're wasting huge amounts of public money on trying to ram them up. And do what? The charges against... Well, it wasn't pursued against Alison Pearson, was it? Because it was nonsense.
Yes.
Harry was then taken in for interview because he'd upset the feelings of the man now known as Lindsay Watson,
yes,
who was dismissed from the police for gross misconduct for harassing Harry.
Right.
But then, because Harry said something that hurt his feelings, such as, well, you're a man, Harry was then interviewed, and he tried to arrest the sergeant who was interviewing him on the grounds of harassment.
Yes, it was a citizen's arrest. Yes. Did that work?
No, it didn't. But you can see how far we've come, because I think when it first happened to Harry, he was, I think, quite frightened. Have somebody come to your workplace, we've come to check your thinking.
That was the phrase that was used, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, PC Girl denies it hotly, and the court couldn't make a finding of fact about it, but I believe Harry about that. I'm quite prepared to believe that's what was said. So this is what I mean about baby steps. It's ridiculous we're still fighting this, but neither Alison Pearson or Harry Miller were charged with anything. I don't know what the police are doing. Are they trying to, like, frighten everybody?
Yes.
It's not working, though, and that's the great thing, because people have found their voice. You've helped it, other people have helped it. We're still fighting the battles, but I do feel hopeful.
Yes.
That we've come a long way.
And, of course, the work that you're doing with Fair Cop and everything you do. I mean, isn't it really the case that we just have to keep making the case for free speech all the time in every generation, because it's not something you win and then it's done forever? There's always a threat to it. There's always
and that is the massive problem, because we've got complacent. We've been lucky enough to live in a society where we haven't faced the Stasi. Remember, was it 1 in 5 East German citizens were somehow involved with the Stasi? Because people love it. They love snitching. They love peering at their neighbours. And we've just got complacent because we managed to dodge all of that. And now I think a lot of us are waking up to seeing, well, this is actually the reality. The price of our freedom is always going to be eternal vigilance. I think that's what a lot of us forgot. I forgot it. A lot of this was going on without me realising, and then it happens to you, and you've suddenly got to find £50,000 to say, please get that picture of my dog off your database. I mean,
it sounds so ridiculous, and yet it's so serious.
I laugh because it is ridiculous, his cute little puppy face. And yet, if I'd applied to be a judge, for example, that's probably what they would have seen. And remember, at the top of the paper, however ridiculous the tweets underneath it, it said, a barrister posting hate. And I don't think many people would have read beyond that.
Absolutely. And, of course, authoritarianism happens by increments, not immediately. Sarah Phillimore, thanks so much for all your appearances on Free Speech Nation, particularly tonight.
Thank you very much for what you've done, Andrew. Best of luck in your new endeavours.
So, during Advent, we're doing the countdown of priests. Here's a new one for today.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 15.
Hi, I'm Richard Ingman, Vicar of Crofton Parish. We often think that faith and doubt can't coexist. If you have faith, surely you have no doubts, right? People of doubt can't have faith. Some of us who doubt, we often kind of feel envious of those who have so much faith. In Matthew chapter 13, we see John the Baptist, the second most important person in the gospel, having doubts. He's a preacher, he's a prophet, he's a true believer. But he's been imprisoned, and in his cell, his certainty is starting to ebb away. Was I right to believe? The truth is, faith and doubt coexist within all of us. Jesus doesn't criticize John for his doubts. He just reminds him of why he believed in the first place. Whatever your doubts, maybe this Christmas is the opportunity for you to remind yourself of what and why you believed in the first place.
And you can check out all of our Advent priests if you just go to gbnews.com/Advent. There's one every day. Who will it be next? OK, so next on Free Speech Nation, it's your unfiltered dilemmas, plus social sensations. We're going to be looking at what's gone viral this week. Please don't go anywhere.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
British 10-year-old has beaten Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein in an IQ test, would you believe? Genius Krish Arora got the maximum score of 162, which puts him in the top 1% globally.
Goodness me. Well, Krish's parents noticed his brilliant potential after learning he could read fluently by the age of 4.
Krish, how does it feel to be a child genius?
I feel really happy and privileged.
Aww. Do you see it as a gift that you have?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just wonderful. Nichelle, what do you make of your child being a genius? When did it become apparent to you that Krish had something different, something special?
I think at the age of 4, he was doing things that were way beyond and above his age.
Yeah.
He could read fluently, and he could spell correctly, and he was doing complex decimal divisions. So we thought that he's on to something. I think there's a spark out here.
Wow. And how were you reading books, Krish? Did you just pick them up from your mum and dad's bookshelf and just start reading to yourself?
We used to go to the library and we got books.
Such a good tip. Such a good tip as parents.
Yeah.
Head to the library, take your kids to the library.
So, Nichelle, can Krish just do it all? Is he just an all-rounder genius? Every subject, every talent, he can do it all?
Absolutely, and he helps out the family as well. He's been teaching me grade 1 piano, and he hopes, and I repeat, he hopes that I'm going to complete it in 12 months' time. And he also helps out Mum, because when Mum is teaching his sister, Mum sometimes says, Krish, go solve that problem and, help your sister out. So, yes, he can do it all.
Krish, you're a superstar.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. It's time for Social Sensations. That's where we look at what's been going viral this week. So first up, this is an old one, but it has resurfaced this week. It's gone a bit viral, so let's have a look.
It looks like he's having a nice feast.
She, her.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
But it was not all good.
Hi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm not sir.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, like it's like a knife in the heart. I did specifically ask ahead of time not to be called sir. Yeah.
OK, so what I love about this individual puts a camera up to film themselves getting angry when the reaction inevitably happens.
Sounds like it's got bigger balls than me.
Well, yeah. It's a bit mad, isn't it?
Quite clearly, that situation is contrived entirely so that she can be offended and that she can record that and show that to the world and say, look how bad the world is. And this is what's the problem with the whole this is what's the problem with the whole ideology. There are plenty of trans people out there who just want to go about their business.
Yes.
This person doesn't.
Well, this guy, he just wants to get a reaction, doesn't he? I mean, what's his problem?
I think she's an attention seeker. No, I was doing a gig during the Fringe and someone came up to me and went, Bruce, you're aware I'm using they, them pronouns now? And I went, but is your name still your name and do you want introduced as that? I said, so why are you telling me about your pronouns? Do you want me to say, here they come, and did you enjoy them? And they got really angry with me and told me I was a bigot.
Well, there we go. There's a lesson in there for us all. Let's get another video now. What's this one?
It'll be freezing this Christmas without fuel at home. It'll be freezing this Christmas while Keir Starmer's warm. It'll be cold, so cold, without fuel at home this Christmas.
She told me that she doesn't get out of bed till midday because she didn't want to turn the heating on.
I mean, it is funny, but it's also deeply bleak, isn't it? You know,
it's just such a marvellous mix of mud and Keir Starmer's incompetence.
Yeah.
What a wonderful... I hope that goes to number one, by the way.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think it should go to number one?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you like that? No, but you wouldn't want that as number one for Christmas, would you?
No. No, I don't think Diane Abbott has a great singing voice. My point about it, but that is really disturbing because it's like, so you've got money to give people abroad, which I know makes me so... Was it 50 million for Syria or something like that?
Yeah.
And yet you can't give pensioners...
Yeah, it's really sad, isn't it?
Something to put
it's really sad.
into their Bunsen burner.
He deserves to be criticised for this and mocked, so I'm glad it's happening. Well, look, this is the time where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. I've been so thrilled with all the problems that you've sent in over the last 3.5 years, and yet we've never really got it right, have we? So let's try and solve this dilemma from Mary from Yorkshire. Mary, we're going to sort your life out. You've said, my colleagues at work won't stop doing impressions of my admittedly thick and incomprehensible Scarborough accent. Do you think this mockery constitutes a breach of the Equality Act, and should I take them to HR? Are people from Scarborough a protected characteristic, do you think?
I don't think Scarborough's a real place.
No,
I'm not necessarily sure this.
Well, I've never seen it.
No, neither have I.
No.
So you wouldn't agree with it.
No, it's like Gondor or something.
I have a friend from Hull who claims she doesn't have an accent. She does, and it's from Hull.
Yeah. OK. What do you think, Paul? What should she do? I mean, clearly it's not a breach of anything.
Well, I don't know now.
Well, maybe not.
It could well be. I haven't heard it. I'm glad you read it out. Maybe if she read it out, I wouldn't have understood it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's get another dilemma before we go. This is from Mo. Mo from Croydon.
Ugh.
Do you know Mo from Croydon?
Not Croydon, really.
OK. Mo, let's have a look at your problem in an impartial way. In spite of being a fundamentally poor manager, disorganised and lazy, I've been promoted again and again at work. I can think of numerous colleagues who would be better suited to my new role. So should I stand aside?
No, because Angela Rayner hasn't, so just go with what's happening now. And I like Angela. We were in Ibiza recently.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. But Mo, I mean, look, at least you're self-aware, which is quite good, you know.
Unbelievable.
Just ride the gravy train.
Yeah, this is the sort of stuff we've had for your 3 years, and
yeah, exactly.
I'm just glad we're still attracting these idiots.
Well, look, one final dilemma. We've got Randy.
Who isn't?
Randy. Thank you. Right, Randy says, I've recently been doing work experience at a car wash, and my mentor, Mitt, is one of the best at what he does in a generation.
Mitt.
He doesn't think I have what it takes to follow in his footsteps. Should I give it up? I'm sorry, this does sound inventive.
This is a hoax.
This can't be real.
No.
So,
work experience at a car wash.
Randy in the car wash with Mitt the boss. I don't buy this for a second.
Is Lily involved in this?
What do you make of this one, Bruce? Do you think, you know, what? Well, look, let's take it for real. If it is someone working at a car wash and they're trying to insinuate that he's not really got what it takes to pick up that sponge.
Does he not have arms or hands?
Maybe not.
Is there some kind of physical preventative?
Are you suggesting that working at a car wash isn't that hard?
No, what I'm saying is that I think the vast majority of people could, unless they had some kind of body issue, wash a car.
Maybe. What do you think, Paul?
Well, most of the car wash people I know are Eastern European illegals, and they're not called Mitt and Randy.
So
they do a blooming good job, Andrew.
OK, well, you think that it's not real?
No, it's not real.
OK, fine. OK, well, look, that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. But thank you very much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Ipso censured a journalist for telling the truth. The UK government banned puberty blockers, and I hosted my last Free Speech Nation. So thanks ever so much to my panel, Bruce and Paul, to all of my brilliant guests this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live, the show doesn't stop. Josh Howie's going to be hosting. Come and join him live in the studio. Just go to sroaudiences.com. You can apply there and come along and have a great time. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, so I won't. But do stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's coming up next. Don't forget, Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. And I'd just finally like to say thanks for watching for the last 3 years. Merry Christmas. God bless us, everyone. Farewell.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you have had a good evening, although we have started to see a band of rain push its way into northern and western areas of Scotland. Some quite squally winds around this evening. As this continues to move its way in, it will turn quite persistent for western areas of Scotland, in particular the Highlands, seeing a lot of rainfall during this forthcoming night. Generally drier further towards the south, but quite a lot of cloud around. Blustery still in amongst all of that. Those southwesterly winds filtering in, some quite mild air, so most of us will hold up around 9 or 11 degrees Celsius as you start off Monday morning. This rain band will still be in place throughout much of the day on Monday, and so really we will see those rainfall totals really tossing up, potentially half a month's worth of rain quite widely across areas of western Scotland. Snow melt as well underneath those mild temperatures will provide further flooding impacts in places as well, so do take care, and a rain warning is in force. Generally though, for Northern Ireland, parts of England and Wales as well, we will hopefully start to see the cloud break up a touch more compared to what we have seen today, and so more of us should see some of those brighter, maybe even sunnier spells developing at times over the course of the day. We do still have that brisk wind around in places though, still coming in from that southwesterly direction, so temperatures around 9 to 12 degrees Celsius once again, even by day, but that blustery wind will just take the edge off the feel of things a touch when you are stepping outside at times. Into Tuesday, we've got another area of low pressure that is going to be moving its way in, steadily pushing its way in from parts of the southwest. Again, this will be bringing some further strong winds, particularly gales around coastal areas in the west, but also further bands of rain, potentially heavy at times, perhaps mostly affecting Northern Ireland, and then steadily pushing its way into Scotland. England and Wales, still the risk of some showers around, but you've got the greater chance of seeing a few sunnier or brighter spells in there at times. Still though, those strong winds coming in from the south going to field in those milder conditions, but a change in wind direction later in the week means that we will start to see those temperatures dropping down a touch, much cooler for all of us. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. The UK has announced £50 million in humanitarian aid for vulnerable Syrians across the Middle East after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad's regime. The Foreign Office says the emergency support will be delivered through the UN and NGO agencies to people in the country, as well as to refugees in Lebanon and in Jordan. Britain yesterday joined talks in Aqaba hosted by Jordan and attended by ministers and delegates. £30 million will be channelled within Syria for food, shelter and emergency healthcare, with £10 million will go to the World Food Programme in Lebanon and £10 million to the WFP and the UN's refugee agency, UNHCR, in Jordan, while the intervention comes a week after the collapse of the Assad regime.
We want to see a Syrian-led and a Syrian